Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. We will begin shortly, maybe another 5 to 8 minutes or so, as we are still waiting on a number of attendees to join us. But a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Please take a look for the questions box. You'll find it in your dashboard on the right-hand side. It'll be just a little tab, and you can hit the little arrow and open it up. You can even use a little square with the pin thing in it. Kind of what it looks like, and pop it out so you can more easily type in there. And I ask you to just send a quick hi or hello or how you doing, good evening, whatever you want to send, just so I know that you found the questions box, because this is where you'll be sending your questions throughout the presentation. So take a second to find that, and thank you, Donna, for sending that and reading my message in the chat. I appreciate it. Thank you, Pearl. You guys are awesome. You found the questions box. Well done. Okay, the other thing I want you guys to find is the handouts box. So there are a couple documents in there for you guys to download and save for your own reference. One is a LLM flyer, so it talks a bit more about the LLM programs and the benefits of LLM programs. And the other one is our prospectus. So if you've met us at an event, you would have picked up a little booklet. This is the PDF version of that booklet, so it's easy for you to save and refer to when you're going through your research in the application process. So make sure to take a second to download those. And I see that both Isabella and Elizabeth have found the questions box as well. Thank you, ladies. We are still waiting on about 16 attendees to join us, so we're going to give them a few more minutes. I would say another 5 minutes or so. So your 5-minute warning to pop to the loo, grab a tea or a coffee, whatever it is you think you need, a nice big jug of water to get through this presentation. And the presentation itself will take about 35 to 40 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions afterwards. All right, ladies, I will see you in a few minutes. Welcome to those of you who have just joined us. We were going to give it a few more minutes to see if we can get a few more registrants to get online. We are waiting for another 10 or 11 people. So take a couple seconds to take a look around your dashboard, grab a coffee or a tea, go to the loo, and we'll get started in another 2 to 3 minutes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar this evening. My name is Heidi, and I'm going to be leading the session this evening. I would like to share with you a couple things that you should be finding on your dashboard before we get started on the presentation. So if you've just joined us in the last few minutes, please take a look and find the questions box. And this is where you'll be typing your questions throughout the presentation. Feel free to type in anything you're thinking about at the time, and we'll take questions at the end of the presentation. So I will answer them all at the end. But don't hesitate to add something in while you're thinking about it so you don't forget it. So find that questions box and send me a quick hi, hello, just so that I know that you found it. And also look for the handouts box. So here you will find a couple downloadables. These are a flyer and a prospectus that you will find helpful when doing your research into law school in the UK. One is about LLM programs, and the other is our general prospectus, which is a little booklet that we give out at events. So this is the PDF version that you can save for yourself to reference while you're doing your research. So please make sure to download those when you get a chance, and we will get started on the presentation. So a couple housekeeping things. You will remain muted throughout the course of the presentation. I'm the only one that's going to be talking, and this is just to keep down the background noise. So you won't be able to ask questions outright, which is why you need to find that questions box. So take a little search for that. The presentation should be about 35 to 40 minutes, and we'll answer questions at the end. And make sure to type those questions as we're going. So let's get started. Our agenda for this presentation is to cover who is CLFA, so why am I hosting this presentation about going to law school in the UK, what do we do, how can we help you, and why would you want to study in the UK, the types of law degrees that are available in the UK system and which one might be the best fit for you, and then we'll talk about the next steps, so how do you get started on the application process and what to do next in your research. Okay, so CLFA is a Canadian company. We were started by a retired law professor named John Kelly in 2006, and he was approached by a few UK universities who were receiving applications from Canadian students, but they didn't really understand how to process Canadian applications because these students already had a bachelor's degree, which is unusual in the UK system, and they didn't understand their transcripts, especially if they had a college transcript, because they don't have an equivalent of that in the UK. So John was asked to step in and help them translate these applications, and that is how our advising company began. So we've developed those close relationships with British universities, but we also have personal experience of studying overseas. So myself and all of the other advisors that work with CLFA have all done at least a master's degree in the UK system. So we understand the process from the student perspective, and we are able to answer those questions for you as well. So what is our job? Well, we help match you up with the best fit universities. So we look at your GPA or grades, the type of campus environment you're interested in, any extracurriculars you want to get involved in. So if there's a sports that you like to play, like if you're a hockey player, we have a few universities that do have hockey teams, which is exciting. Any other extracurricular opportunities like pro bono work or a law clinic, we can help you match up with universities that offer those. So we try and find the best fit for you personally. And to do this, we get to know you one-to-one. So we work with 12 universities, and since 2006, we have sent over 2,000 Canadians to law school in the UK. So we kind of know what we're doing. We've been doing this for a while. This is our list of universities. So if you're familiar with the UK at all, you'll know that these universities are kind of all over the country, from the Midlands down to the South Coast. And we have 3 universities based in London, and these are Brunel, City, and Royal Holloway. We also have a partner based in Northern Ireland, which is Queen's University Belfast. So if Ireland is of interest, then definitely consider QUB. All right, so how do we help students? Well, as I mentioned, we start by matching you up with the right university. So we get to know you and what you're looking for, and then we shorten a list of universities for you and help you narrow down that list to your top 5. From that point, you get started on the physical application. So we send you support documents about what is required for that application, and then we support you through that entire application process by receiving your documents, so your transcripts, reference letters, all of that, and putting it into a nice little file. We also review your personal statement up to 3 times to ensure that you have a very strong statement and you're making a good case for yourself as a potential law student. Then once your application is complete and sent off to the universities, we send them that little application file I mentioned so that they have all of your documents in one go and they can consider your application as quickly and efficiently as possible. After you've received all your decisions, you've decided to go, you're super excited, and you've accepted an offer, then we help you with accommodations, finance, visas, pre-departure, everything that you need to know from the point of accepting an offer to getting you to the UK. So we make sure that you are supported throughout the entire process. What goes into creating a strong application? Well, the main thing that we are concerned about is the personal statement support. So personal statements in the UK system are different from the Canadian system, and they're very, very short in comparison. We help you edit that statement to ensure that you are keeping it general for the 5 universities, but also covering your key points to show the university that you will be an excellent addition to their law school. I mentioned you can apply to 5 universities at once. That is 5 universities in one application, which means all of the documents have to go to those 5 universities, and you need to keep that message very general for them. So we make sure that that is taken care of as part of the application process, and we handle all that paperwork. We send them your transcripts, reference letter, personal statement, all of it directly, so that they have everything they need direct to admissions, and they can turn around a decision. Okay, so to sum up what we do, we provide one-to-one support, mostly via email, but we are also happy to Skype, phone call. I even WhatsApp and text with some of my students. So whatever works for you, we're happy to provide that support and make sure that you have all the information that you need. We also provide information about finances. So we help you get in touch with all of the options that you have to help finance your degree, as we understand that studying abroad can be expensive, but also law school is expensive. So making sure that you find appropriate funding and you're able to make this dream come true by having that funding available. We also provide visa assistance in that we send you a nice big PDF document with all of the information that you need about how to get through the visa application, what documents are required, timelines, all those sorts of things. So while we are not immigration consultants, we do provide you as much support as we can and try to have as much information available as possible for you during that time. Last on this list is the Graduate Support Program. So this is a network we are starting to develop through your participation and all of our alumni and students that we're working with. We hope to create this network on LinkedIn and Facebook so that you have access to other students who are studying in the UK, as well as alumni who've returned from our partner universities and those that are working in Canada. Try and create those connections so that you find it easier to find articling and a job when you return. So help us grow this network by finding us on LinkedIn and Facebook and making sure that you're following us and connecting with our groups. All right. So why would anybody want to study law in the UK? Why is this such a popular option? And I think this is a good time to take a poll of the group. So let's find out how many of you have written the LSAT. So take a quick second to answer my question there. And just while you're answering that question, for those of you that have joined us in the past few minutes, please find the questions box as well and make sure that you know where that is so you can send your questions throughout the presentation. All right, we've got a few more people we're waiting on for answers. I'm going to give it another 15 seconds. So if you haven't voted on the poll yet, make sure to add your answer there. Perfect. All done. Okay, let's see what you guys said. So, have you written the LSAT? So 13% said yes. Excellent. Great on you for attempting that test. Would not be me. I can tell you that. Most of you haven't written it, which is good news for our system, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And a few of you plan to write it. So good on you for trying to get through that test, because I hear it's challenging, but I wish you all the best. Okay, so the reason I say it's good on you who haven't written the LSAT is because you don't need it for the UK. They will not look at it. It is not required. So if you are serious about going to law school and you really don't want to write that test, then the UK is an excellent option to be able to avoid writing the LSAT. There is a test called the LNAT in the UK, but it is not required by any of our partners and is only required by a specific list of universities. So talk to your advisor about the universities you're interested in applying to, and they can let you know if the LNAT is required for those schools. Okay, another big reason that people go to the UK is it is the original place where common law was practiced, where common law began. So our Canadian system is based on the UK system, which means going back to the UK means you're going back to basics. You're getting a much broader degree in the UK system than you are in the Canadian system. And they cover UK, EU, and international case law, so a very broad perspective on common law, whereas in Canada, they cover primarily Canadian case law. So something to keep in mind when you're thinking about what you want to practice. It may be more beneficial for you to go overseas due to the type of case law that they're teaching. You can also receive a world-class education in the UK. So if you look at that list of partners and do some research into those schools, you'll notice they are top ranked in the world, all in the top 200 universities in the world. So something to keep in mind when you're choosing a university, you do want to choose a university that is internationally recognized. These are also prestigious universities, especially those that are well known for research that are part of the Russell Group. So if you're interested in doing research in a particular field of law, then you may want to consider a Russell Group university for the level of research they provide. You can also specialize in areas of study, and this is something that the UK does very well, and they are well known for. So in the UK, professional degrees are taught at the undergraduate level, and then the master's or postgraduate level study is where you can specialize in a particular field. So they do offer, let's say, law and business as an LLB, but you can also do international business and finance law as an LLM, for example. So if you have a particular area of law that you are interested in, we highly recommend looking at postgraduate study to specialize in that field and boost your employability, because there are thousands of students going into the job market every year in Canada with a law degree, either a JD or an LLB from a different jurisdiction. If you have an LLM in a specialization, you are more likely to get hired for that job that you're aiming for than those that just have an LLB or JD degree. So something to keep in mind. Now, the other thing on this list is travel opportunities. So we're going to send another poll out here and see, have you ever traveled to Europe? Let's see what the answers are for this one. Wow, we're quick on the trigger this time. Almost done. Perfect. Well done, guys. That was a quick response. Okay, let's see what everybody said. All right, so majority of you have been to Europe, so you've bitten by that travel bug and you're ready to go back. That is awesome. And a few of you have not, and then that 25% that can't wait to go. Yeah, definitely. I was definitely in that category at one point in time. So for those of you who have been to Europe, you'll understand, one, how expensive it is to travel from here to Europe, and two, how cheap it will be to travel around Europe once you're in the UK. So think about cutting out that $1,000 round trip flight and traveling on a student budget. You could probably go to Paris from London for £150, which is less than $300 Canadian for a weekend. So factor that into your budget and make sure that you're making some time to travel, because it is an amazing opportunity once you're already over there to use your weekends and use your holidays to go and see the rest of Europe and the world. The world is also accessible. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. All right, career paths. So we have a lot of students come to us who say, I just want to be a practicing lawyer, I want to get a job in a law firm, and I want to represent clients with that firm, whatever the firm's focus might be, family, commercial law, you name it. And that's completely fine. That is still definitely an option with a law degree. However, I challenge you to think outside the box. Think outside of that traditional path and look at other opportunities, as there are so many opportunities with a law degree out there. So this is just a short list of career paths that we get questions about on a daily basis. And this is where we've gotten these answers from all of you, from our students. So the first is government, either at the federal, provincial, or even municipal levels. There are politicians who have a law or business background. So if you look at your local politicians, I'm sure you will see that is the case. And this is definitely an excellent stepping off point from a law degree. You will have the basis you need to do well in politics. So if that's of interest, it is an option. The finance industry. So you may think that you need a finance background to work in a bank. However, that is not the case. Banks also have legal teams. And working in a legal team in a large bank would be a much better job than working in a law firm, because you'll be working 9 to 5, probably not that 60 to 70 hour week that you'd be looking at in the law firm, and it would be a steady salaried position. So something to keep in mind if you do have an interest in finance or any connections in the banking industry, definitely an option. Right, media. So this is a growing field and of particular importance in today's day and age where social media is such a international thing. And I think of it in particular in the context of things like the Me Too campaign, where there are questions of intellectual property and I'm sure you can throw a few more out there, entertainment law, all these sorts of things where you need to be aware of the types of law that are affected in those circumstances. So if you have an interest in social media, you find you're on Instagram or Facebook all the time, then definitely consider specializing in media or entertainment law so that you can interact with that particular type of law, as it will be greatly needed currently and in the future. Academia is always a possibility. So if you like school and you like research, you can do an LLB, LLM, PhD, and start teaching and researching in a university setting. Definitely an option. And a lot of students are actually going that way these days as research and policy is needed. And last on this list, and I think the most popular option I get questions about on a daily basis, is working with a charity or NGO. I find that students who are interested in practicing law are also interested in making a difference in the world. And a great way to do that is through working with a charity or an organization such as the UNHCR, WHO, Habitat for Humanity. We've even had students talk about working with their local Aboriginal groups, which is awesome. So if that is of interest, then the law degree is definitely the way you want to go to be able to help those communities and provide the support and change that you are hoping to do with your career. All right, money matters. So how much is it going to cost you to go overseas for law school? Well, I just did these calculations a few minutes ago. So you're looking at about 26 to 34,000 Canadian per year for tuition. And that is the LLB, so the basic qualifying law degree. And that's actually cheaper than going to the University of Toronto or Osgoode Hall Law School, as they are currently 35 to 37,000 per year for tuition. So you'd actually be saving a little bit of money by going overseas rather than staying in Toronto. And the LLM, which is a master's in law, is slightly more expensive. This is because it is a postgraduate 12-month program rather than 9 months. So you're paying for another 3 months of instruction as well as a higher level degree. But still quite reasonable. And when you think about it, the average cost of an LLM in Canada is $33,000 a year, and majority of those LLMs are 2 years in length. So you're still saving time and money by going overseas for an LLM. All right, looking at living costs. So the UKVI, or UK Visa and Immigration Service, has provided these estimates for how much it will cost you to live inner London or outside London in the UK. And these are just estimates, but I think they're fairly reasonable estimates based on what I personally spent and what I know others have spent in their time in the UK. So you're looking at about $19,500 Canadian to live inner London, and then outside London is a bit cheaper at $15,600 Canadian. So thinking about the cost of living, this also highly depends on your lifestyle and how you live. So if you're living in a studio flat in central London and you're eating out at the pub every night, it's probably going to cost you more than 19,000 Canadian. You'll probably want to budget a bit higher. Whereas if you're living in a smaller town like Colchester or Exeter and you're living with 5 or 6 flatmates or roommates and you're getting groceries every night to make dinner at home, then you could probably live on less than 15,000 Canadian. So keep in mind how you live and what you expect to spend, and then factor in your travel as well. So we find on average student spends about maybe 50 to 55,000 Canadian per year on tuition, living costs, a little bit of travel, all of that combined. So keep that number in mind when you're thinking about budgeting for law school. Now, I just want to check, as I have had one person say she couldn't hear me. So can someone send me a quick message in the questions box just to confirm that you can hear me right now? Just want to make sure we still have audio happening. And I haven't lost everybody entirely. I can hear you. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, awesome. We are all set to continue with the presentation. Okay, we're going to start talking about the types of law degrees. So we'll look at 3 different types of degrees today, and these are the fairly basic degrees in the UK. We'll start with the LLB, or Bachelor's in Law, and then we'll look at the LLB-SS, as we like to call it, which is the 2-year senior status LLB, and then we'll talk a bit about the LLM. Okay, so the LLB, or Bachelor's in Law, is a qualifying law degree. It is directly equivalent to the Canadian JD, but taught at the undergraduate instead of postgraduate level. So when you're thinking about an LLB, don't think of it as just another bachelor's degree. Think about it as a qualifying law degree, because that's what it is. Now, because it is technically a bachelor's degree in the UK system, it only requires a high school diploma for admission, and this program includes 2 years of core modules or courses and 1 year of electives. So very similar to the JD format that we have here in Canada, but you don't need that bachelor's degree to apply, which is awesome news. They will also consider any applicants with any level of post-secondary. So if you do a year, 2 years, even 4 years of university, or you have a college diploma, they will still consider you for this program. Application documents include a secondary school transcript, so they're looking for that high school transcript, 1 academic reference from someone who's taught you in the past year, and then a personal statement. And that's the core documents. You can add a resume, you can add another reference letter, but that's the basics of what they require. Now, average entry requirements are looking for about an 80% average in high school, with a minimum of 80% in English 4U or English 30, whichever province you're from. And they will consider down to a 75%. Some schools require up to an 85%. So talk to your advisor about your grades and ask which schools would be the best fit for you, and then we can go from there. And now if you have any level of post-secondary education, on average they request a 3.0 or B+. However, if you do have a 4-year bachelor's degree, they will consider as low as a 2.6 or a B- average to be considered for a 3-year program. So if your grades weren't so great, then you can definitely talk to your advisor about applying to a 3-year LLB. All right, the two-year LLB. This is our most popular program, and it goes by many, many different names. So we've nicknamed this program as the LLB-SS, or LOB Senior Status, as that tends to be the most popular choice for titling this course. However, you will see that it's called an Accelerated, a Graduate Entry LLB, Graduate Accelerated LLB. There are so many different combinations, but they're all basically the same thing. It's a two-year LLB. And it is a qualifying law degree that has been condensed into 2 years by removing the year of electives. So you have 2 years of core courses with maybe 2 or 3 electives in that 2 years, and you get everything you need for a qualifying law degree in common law. Now, this program was created because the universities were receiving so many applications from students who had already completed a 4-year bachelor's. They wanted to acknowledge that you've already done 4 years of an undergraduate and you probably don't want to do any more school than is absolutely necessary. So they've created this program specifically for those of you who have completed that 4-year honors bachelor's degree. Now, if you're not sure if your degree qualifies for this program, ask your advisor and they can determine if it does or not. Okay, application documents look very similar to the previous slide of the same name. So they're looking for that high school transcript still. It is still technically a bachelor's degree you're applying for, so they do need to check that off the list, and they will want your high school diploma as well. And they're looking for that university transcript now. They need to be able to prove that you've got 4 years of an undergrad, an academic reference from someone who taught you in the last year. So unfortunately, at this point, you can't ask your high school history teacher to write your personal or your reference letter for you. They require it from a professor who's taught you more recently. So if you do have that favorite high school teacher you still want to provide you with a reference, that's fine. We can send it in as a secondary reference, but you will have to get a reference letter from a professor. And then, of course, your personal statement, which is always required for an application. Now, average entry requirements, they are looking for about a 3.0 or B+ average for the majority of our universities, and that is pretty much guaranteed acceptance. So this isn't a situation like here in Canada where they say we want a 3.5 GPA and a 175 or 157 on the LSATs, when in fact they're going to be looking at about a 3.8 due to the level of competition. That is not the case here. These schools will accept you with a 3.0. There are a couple schools that require a 3.2, which our advisors can point out to you, but majority pretty much guaranteed acceptance with a 3.0. So awesome news there. They are still going to look at your high school grades, though not as much in this case. They do still want to see that 80% in English. Okay, Masters of Law. This is our last program today, and the main difference between this program and the previous two is that this is not a qualifying law degree. So you can't just do this 1-year program after your bachelor's degree and then practice in Canada. That is not a possibility. You would need to do an LLB or a JD to be qualified to practice. However, the LLM is a great option for those of you who are not necessarily interested in practicing law, but maybe want to work in policy or contracts. That is definitely a possibility. But it's also a great top-up for students who have an interest in a particular area of law. You want to boost your resume, so you get an LLM in a particular field. Now, I like to use the example of environmental law because that is a popular one that we get asked about. So here it goes. If you have a BSc in environmental sciences and you have an interest in doing an LLM in environmental law, that is a possibility. You could go straight from your BSc into an LLM and do the law courses as part of your studies in the UK, and then complete your LLM with a dissertation that combines the knowledge from your BSc in environmental law with the law courses that you did during the course of your LLM. Then you could come back to Canada, work for the government, work for a charity that does environmental work, work for large corporations who are focused on reforestation, any sort of thing that you're interested in, right? Lots of options there. Or you could do your BSc in environmental sciences, then do an LLB, and then do your LLM in environmental law and come back to Canada and practice as an environmental lawyer representing clients in that area of law. So there's kind of the difference between doing the LLM direct from your BSc or doing the LLB and then the LLM. I hope that makes sense. So great way to top up your degree, also gives you a third year of law school. And keeping in mind, if you do decide to go directly into an LLM from your bachelor's degree, you do have to have a certain amount of applicable background. And some courses will require a certain amount of law. So something to talk to your advisor about if that is of interest. Okay, application documents. So this slide looks pretty similar to the previous two with a few differences. So they are still looking for your high school and university transcripts. You can send 2 academic references this time. They do actually require that in most postgraduate applications, and multiple personal statements. So you will be writing a new personal statement for each LLM program you apply to, because they are specific programs at specific universities. And then they also want to see your resume, as they want to see any work or volunteer experience that you have in the field. Now, average entry requirements, exactly the same as the previous 2 slides, but there is a bit more flexibility with LLMs. They're looking for very interested and passionate individuals, so they will consider slightly lower grades if you can make a good case for yourself for the program. And these are small programs. The average number of students per LLM stream is about 10 students maximum in the program. So something to keep in mind. You get a lot of support and a lot of access to the researchers and the professors that you're working with. It's a great way to network and get into the field that you're looking for. Okay, perfect. So now we're going to talk about accreditation. And this is probably one of the biggest questions that we receive as advisors. Is how do I bring my degree back to Canada? So the answer is you go through the accreditation process with the NCA, which is the National Committee on Accreditation, and they are a division of the Federation of Law Societies of Canada. So they work on behalf of the Federation to assess internationally trained law students and determine their eligibility for the bar program in Canada. So important to note that it is only required to go through the accreditation process if you've completed an LLB and you wish to practice. If you choose not to practice or you've just done an LLM, then you would not have to go through this process. So only required if you want to do the bar exams. All right, so I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that the UK JD and the Canadian LLB are very similar, as they're both based in common law, and the Canadian system is based on the UK system originally. So the main difference between them is the case law that you're covering. And the Federation of Law Societies of Canada wants to see you cover a certain amount of Canadian case law before you can approach the bar here in Canada. So you need to do this material in one of a few different ways. So the first and most popular option for completing this requirement is self-study, open book, pass or fail exams. And the number of exams are assigned to you by the NCA. So when you're completing your studies in the UK, you apply for assessment to the NCA and send them your transcripts directly from the university. They will assess your file and determine how many exams you need to write. Now, the magic combination for the Federation is 2 years of post-secondary education and 3 years of law school to be admitted to the bar. Because the UK system allows you to go straight from high school, you may be missing that 2 years of post-secondary. If that is the case, then you will have to write 7 exams, as there are a core 5 that are required, and they will tack on an extra 2 to make up for the 2 years of post-secondary education. But I mean, 2 years of university versus 2 self-study exams. It's a pretty good trade-off. Now, if you do the 2-year senior status LLB that we've talked about, you'll be missing 1 year of law school. So same idea, they'll tack on a couple extra exams. You'll end up writing 7 exams in place of an extra year of law school. But again, 2 exams versus a year of law school, also a good trade-off in time and money. So average number of exams students are asked to write is 7, and these are in content such as Canadian constitutional law, Canadian criminal law, foundations of Canadian law, Canadian administrative law, and business practices in Canada. as the core 5. Now those extra 2 could be a number of different things. You're usually given a list of 4 and you get to choose 2 out of the 4. So I recommend, if you are terrified of tax law, for example, do tax law as an elective in the UK and then write family law here as an exam. So think about strategically what you would find easier in a classroom setting versus what you think you can write on your own. Also have a chat with other students, see what they're doing, start a little study group, help each other through these courses. Now that is the main way of doing these exams, is the self-study, open book, pass or fail exams. There are 4 sittings per year. You can write as many exams as you like per sitting. Most of our alumni have recommended writing no more than 2 exams per sitting, as it is a lot of material to cover. And if you fail one, you have to wait 2 sittings to rewrite it, which means you would not be completing it in the 12 to 18 months that you were hoping for. So try and pass them the first time around. That being said, we have had students who have successfully completed up to 5 exams in one sitting. So if you think you're that rock star and you can do it, awesome, good job, make sure you study hard. There are other ways to complete these requirements. There are LLMs offered by Osgoode Hall and UBC that are called an LLM in Canadian Common Law or an LLM in Common Law. And this program was created specifically to replace the NCA exams. So it's 8 classes and a dissertation. And those classes are basically the first year of a JD program that cover the courses I just mentioned by title. So Canadian Constitutional Law, Canadian Criminal Law, and so on. You can take this LLM and get the LLM certificate, diploma, degree certificate, whatever they want to call it. And you also get access to that university's career center, which is a great way to get access to the career network that they offer. So there's definitely benefits to doing the LLM. It's becoming more and more popular with our students. It does cost about $30,000. So if you decide to do the self-study route, you're looking at about $4,000 for 7 to 8 exams. And the LLM would replace those exams, but cost you quite a bit more. So something to keep in mind when you're looking at budget. There is also a program at the University of Alberta called the Internationally Trained Lawyers Pathway. It is very similar to the LLMs in that it covers whatever courses you are assigned. However, it does not require you to write 8. You only require to write the number of courses that you are assigned by the NCA. So if you're assigned 5, you do 5. If you're assigned 7, you do 7, and there's no dissertation. But that program also costs about $30,000. So it is another option, but also expensive. There are also online support programs. So Osgoode Hall offers an online study group, shall we say, for the Core 5 NCA exam. So you can sign up for that. I think it costs about $5,000 currently, and you would get support through those Core 5 exams. So it would help you get through the process. There's also another program offered by a college in BC that's very similar. And then you can also start your own study groups. So think about the fact that you will be studying with other students from your town, from your province, and you can start up your own little study groups with your colleagues and make sure that you're all supporting each other through these exams. So lots of opportunities to get through the exams. Okay, I'm going to briefly mention the SQE. And actually, I'm going to take a quick poll and see how many of you this will affect. So when do you hope to start law school? Another quick round of responses. Well done. Okay, so let's see how many of you will be affected by this start. All right, so majority of you are looking for September 2020. Awesome. So you'll be starting soon. We need to get on your applications. Excellent. And then a few of you are looking for 2021. Okay. And then some aren't quite sure yet. That's totally fine. Just doing some research. Good. Okay. So essentially we talk about the SQE because there are some changes happening in the UK for September 2021. So as of September 2021, at this time, they will be deregulating the accreditation of the LLB by the SRA, which is the Solicitors Regulation Authority. So the SRA are the people who determine what degrees are qualifying law degrees and if a student is a viable option to go through the LPC, which is a solicitor practice course, or the bar exams, so the BPTC, which are the bar training courses. So in the UK, it is a split profession and they do those separately. In Canada, we just have the bar exams, one of which is a barrister exam and one is a solicitor exam. So we kind of do the same thing, but ours is combined into one section of bar exams. Okay, trying to make it all make sense. Anyway, the point of this is that the SRA will no longer be accrediting the LLB as a qualifying law degree, but will instead require students to do the SQE or Solicitor's Qualifying Exams. And these are 2 rounds of exams that will be required. And this actually opens up the profession to students who have not taken a law degree. So essentially, if you were living in the UK and you did a bachelor's degree in history, for example, and then you decided you wanted to be a lawyer, you could apply to do the SQE exams, complete both rounds of those exams, and come out the other end as a qualified solicitor. So this doesn't mean that the system is changing in Canada, and this doesn't mean that you are viable to go and do this in the UK. You could not just do the SQE exams and bring it back to Canada. The NCA has been very firm on the fact that they will still require an LLB. However, it does mean that there could be potentially some changes to the accreditation process after 2021. So we are letting you know that there are changes happening, but we don't know exactly what those changes are going to be yet, as there's still a lot of gray area about the SQE and what the SRA will be doing, how a law degree will be accredited in the UK, what a law degree will even look like after September 2021 in the UK. But we are keeping on top of this, and we will let you know if you are affected by this change, what the process will be. When we know, you will know. So keep in touch with your advisor, keep an eye on our website as we'll be getting some information updated there soon, and then let us know if you have any questions. But we just want to be upfront and let you know that things are changing and you should be aware of it. Okay, scary slide over. Moving on to next steps here. Okay, so what do we do next? Well, check out our website, do some research into the universities, check out the information that we have about programs, accreditation, all those sorts of things available on our website. There's tons of information there. And check out our blog. So we have some blogs written by John Kelly, who is that creator of the program that I mentioned at the beginning there. He likes to talk about the changing face of the practice of law in Canada and what you need to do to be successful in the market these days. So definitely interesting to check out if you're concerned about career trajectory, because he's got some really great ideas there. But we also have other blogs about student experience. My colleague Hillary wrote a blog about traveling the UK on a student budget. So definitely something to consider if you're interested in travel. There's also a blog about finding alternate housing to student housing, so off-campus housing options, what to pack. We've got student living, all different sorts of topics in our blog. So take a look and see if there's anything there of interest. Find us on social media. So we do have Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. We are everywhere. So make sure to join our networks and keep an eye on what's going on. Find out when we are in your city so you can come and visit us and meet up with the university reps. We'd like to have them tag along when we're traveling as well. And you can always send us questions via the social media platforms as well, but definitely join our network and make sure you're in touch with that graduate support program so we can ensure that you get in touch with employers when the time comes. Okay, so one last poll for you before I start on the questions. So I want to see how many of you are already working with a CLFA advisor. All right, just waiting on a few more responses here. Excellent. Thank you for your quick responses to my questions. I appreciate it. Okay, so it looks like majority of you are already working with an advisor. A couple of you don't know if you're working with an advisor, and then a couple of you are not. Okay, excellent. So if you aren't working with an advisor, you will receive an email right after the presentation is over. It's an automated email from our webinar system, and it will have my email on it. So if you don't have an advisor, email me. I will make sure you get in touch with one immediately so that we can help you get started on the application process. If you don't know if you have an advisor, feel free to email me as well. I'll help you get in touch as well. Or you can register on our website for a new advisor. But I believe all of you should be assigned one, as you would need to sign up on our form to be able to access the webinar software. So you should have one assigned, but let's make sure that you get in touch with them. For those of you who are already working with an advisor, especially if you're working on applying for September 2020, you want to get started on your application and try to get it submitted before January. This will give you the best opportunity to get offers from your top choices, as well as beating the application rush. Because as of January 15th, the universities will be receiving thousands of applications from home and EU students, which means they will be flooded and you will wait forever for decisions. So if you can apply before Christmas or at least the first week of January, you will have an excellent chance of getting offers before the end of January from all of your choices, or at least decisions from all of your choices. Whereas if you wait until after January 15th, you may not get all your decisions until March. So think about the timeline and what works for you, of course. If you're not getting your first round of grades until February, then you can definitely wait until after that to apply. Applications are open until June 30th, but I do highly recommend applying sooner rather than later. So get on that with your advisor. And like I said, if you don't have an advisor, email me. My email will be on the email that you receive from the webinar software. Or you can email info@canadalawfromabroad.com as well. We'll make sure you get hooked up. Okay, so let's go through your questions. So I understand it takes a few seconds to type up a question, so feel free to send more questions as we're going through the ones that are already here, and I will give it some extra time so that you can send questions through. All right, so let's see what you guys have asked while we're going through. Okay, Pearl asked, what university did you say is in Ireland? Okay, that is Queen's University Belfast. So one of my favorite campuses. I'm a little biased because I love Ireland, but definitely an interesting campus, and they have a great background in criminal law as well as social justice. So a good university for those options. Monica asked, can we do our LLB and LLM at the same time? Unfortunately, no, you cannot, especially on a student visa. You can only be enrolled in one program at a time. And because these are different level programs, it's not available to combine. But if you do a 2-year LLB, you can directly follow that with a 1-year LLM, giving you 3 years of law school, but 2 degrees within those 3 years. And you would apply to the LLM during your last year of your LLB. Okay, next question. Is the reference letter absolutely required? Yes, it is, Janelle. They do require an academic reference. If you've been out of school for more than 5 years, they will consider a work reference. But if you've been in school in 5 years or less, then they do require the academic reference. And this is because they need the evidence that you can be successful. There are a few universities that are more stickler about this than others. So if you absolutely cannot provide a reference letter, talk to your advisor about it and we'll see if we can figure out an option for you. But it is a requirement to even just submit the application online. We do have to put in a reference letter. So talk to your advisor about your situation and see what you can work out. Okay, are you able to complete the LLM in the UK and then come back and complete your JD in Canada? That is an excellent question, Cassandra. So yes, if you wanted to go and directly do a LLM out of your bachelor's degree here in Canada and then complete a JD back in Canada, that is definitely an option. The one thing you cannot do is complete an LLM in the UK and then apply for an LLB in the UK. Because the LLB is a lower level program, you would not be able to get a visa to complete the LLB after you've done an LLM, which is a higher level program. So it becomes an immigration issue rather than a program issue. So we do highly recommend, if you are planning on doing a qualifying law degree, that you do that first before doing the LLM. I think you'll also find that the knowledge level makes the LLM more accessible if you've already done a bachelor's in law and your plan is to practice. So definitely something to keep in mind when looking at which programs to apply to, and something to talk to your advisor about with all of your options. So think about your career trajectory and what you'd like to do, and then talk about the programs and go from there. What happens if you have no access to your high school transcripts? It's been 11 years and I studied in West Africa. Okay, Pearl, that is an excellent question. So I've actually had a number of students from West Africa who have applied, and they did have to apply without transcripts. If you have a diploma or certificate, or can get a letter from your high school, that would be enough. If you've also done, I assume you've done some post-secondary study, so that would be a way to prove that you had completed high school, as you cannot get into a college or university without having completed high school. So we can usually make a case for that. It can be a bit trickier though. So talk to your advisor about your situation and talk to them about different options and what you can do to get paperwork. So the West African students I've worked with previously haven't been able to secure transcripts, but they have gotten signed letters from those institutions, or even a signed letter from their post-secondary institution stating that they applied with a high school diploma. So some way to prove that you completed high school is really what we need. And there are a few different options to complete that. So your advisor should be able to help you with that one. Okay, Isabella states, I really like the idea of studying in London. My mom and I went to see someone who is studying in the UK in Toronto, and they said they can help with applications as well. Now I'm a bit confused about the options, and I know I need to apply soon. What are the differences between Canada Law from Abroad and study in the UK, so I can make a decision? Okay, so I assume you're talking about SI UK as another company, and they are also an advising company, very similar to what we do. I would say we provide better customer service, and this is coming from students that I know of who have started working with both of us and chosen to work with Canada Law from Abroad. So the feedback I received from those students is that they found we were more responsive, we provided more support, and we were able to get them the information that they needed. So it is entirely up to you which company you choose. There are a few out there that can provide support, but get to know your advisor and then decide which company you want to work with is essentially all I can say. As long as their services are free as well, it's a very similar scenario. So you'll have to do your due diligence and determine which company to use, but that's about it. We're fairly similar in what we offer. The main thing though is Canada Law from Abroad only works with law schools. So we have that specific connection and specified interest in law degrees, and that is all that we do. So if you're applying for law, we would be the experts in how to apply to law school. I hope that helps, and good luck with that decision. Okay, so Janelle asked, can I use a degree in the UK? So I assume you mean, can I use my LLB if I complete an LLB in the UK? And the answer is yes. An LLB is still a qualifying law degree, especially if you start in September 2020, it would still be considered to go through the traditional solicitor or barrister training programs and become qualified to practice in the UK. Even if you start in September 2021 and you're affected by the SQE changes, your degree would still be recognized as a bachelor's degree in the UK, which means you could still do the 2 rounds of SQE and be able to practice as a solicitor in the UK. So always an option to practice there. It is also a possibility to practice with an LLB in other common law jurisdictions. So this includes Canada, the US, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Mumbai, Singapore, Nigeria, Pakistan, parts of India. There's so many different options. So anywhere that a common law degree is required for practice, you would be able to use a UK degree. How difficult is it to find an articling position in the UK? That's a great question, Elizabeth. So it is probably just as challenging as a Canadian market to find articling. And actually, they don't call it articling in the UK. They currently call it a training contract. So this is another SQE affected question. So essentially, if you start your degree in September 2020, you would still go through the traditional route of doing the training contract, which is a year of placement in a firm and a year of study in a class to complete the solicitor's training program. So this is equivalent to what you would do in Canada here for articling in your bar exams. It would essentially be more like the LPP program that's offered at Ryerson University, which replaces the articling, but you would have that training contract portion at the firm. So for Canadians on a student visa, you would be required to secure a training contract so that you could get sponsorship for a work visa to stay in the UK and do the training contract with that firm. So it makes it a bit more complicated in that way. However, we've had a lot of students that have secured training contracts in London and other cities like Birmingham and Leeds, for example, Exeter as well. So there is the possibility of getting a training contract and staying in the UK and practicing if that is your choice. And then if you decide to come back to Canada after completing that process and practicing for a period of time, it will change the process a bit to convert your degree back to Canada, and that it might negate or limit the amount of articling that you have to do as part of the bar process. You probably still have to do the NCA exams. That would be open to their interpretation, but you'd also still be required to do the bar exams here in Canada regardless, and it might affect the articling that's required. So I hope that helps. But again, watch this space if you're affected by the SQE, so it all could change. Okay, financing options. So the financing options available to Canadian students include Canadian student loans from your province and federal. So I know Ontario does not offer provincial loans to students going overseas, but you can get the federal portion of OSAP. Other provinces are different. So I do know Alberta and BC offer provincial and federal financing. And then you'd be looking at small scholarships from the universities themselves. Usually between £1,000 to £3,000 is available. Some do have slightly larger scholarship offerings, but they aren't full rides by any means. And then you can also use a bank loan or student line of credit. And those are the most popular options for the full financing of your degree. Because as we talked about, it's going to cost you about 50 to 55,000 Canadian per year for study. So most students would use a line of credit. It's the most flexible option for financing, but you can use a combination of all of those options. Now, Fatimata has also asked, can I apply to an LLM in humanitarian law with a bachelor's in sociology and a minor in law? Okay, great question. That would be a question for our LLM advisor, because she would have to look at these specific programs that you're interested in applying to and then determine how much law background they would require for that specific program. So we can hook you up with our LLM advisor, and she'll be able to work with you on which programs you could apply directly to and which programs you would need a law degree for. So we'll get you in touch with that advisor and go from there, okay? All right. So we've had a couple of people say thank you and they've left. That's fine. Okay, Monica has asked, do we need 80% plus in high school English to be considered if you have a degree? Technically, they do require it. However, we can make a case for you if you didn't hit 80% because you have done 4 years of study in English. So the only exception would be if you're from Quebec and you've done a portion or most of your cégep in university in French, then you would probably be required to write the IELTS just to confirm with them that you have the level of English language required for the program. But for anybody who's done a bachelor's degree, if you didn't quite hit that 80% in high school English, then we can definitely make a case for you. We just have to list it as a requirement because that is what they do require. Okay, Isabella asks, can I do a semester abroad if you do the LLB? Technically, in the 2-year LLB, no. You do not have the space to do a semester abroad. They don't really do semesters abroad in the undergraduate programs because of the way the courses are laid out. So some courses are full year, going from September, October to April. Other courses are half year, and they would be combined. Like contracts and torts, for example, is usually taught in 2 sections, but it's contracts and torts. So you can't miss one or the other, you have to do both. And with a law degree, because the majority of the courses are required, you can't miss anything. So you wouldn't be able to do a semester abroad for the 2-year program. If you chose to do a 3-year LLB, there are a few options that have a work placement year that would go between years 2 and 3. So you could do a year in industry as part of that program, which would be an awesome opportunity, and that's offered by Brunel University. So ask your advisor about that one if you're interested in that. Some universities do offer a year abroad where you can go to another common law jurisdiction to continue your law studies. But again, this is only a 3 or 4-year option, not a 2-year option. Some students even choose to come to Canada as part of that program and do a year at a Canadian university. So that is an option if you're interested. But if you're qualified for the 2-year LLB, really doesn't make a lot of sense to do a 3 or 4-year program when you can just do a 2-year program. But if you are interested in those semester abroad, study abroad, or work placement options, tell your advisor and they can send you more info. Okay, Monica asked, do we need to find an articling position while doing the NCA to be able to practice as a lawyer? Excellent question, and the general answer is yes. So you will have to complete articling in Canada while doing the bar exams to be able to practice as a lawyer here in Canada. Doing your NCA exams is a good timeline for securing that articling position, as the average length of time it takes to secure articling in Canada for even Canadian law graduates is 6 to 18 months, and the average timeline for students to complete NCA exams is 12 to 18 months. So within that 12 to 18 months, you can definitely do some volunteering, get a part-time job in a law firm to secure your position so that once you're done the NCA exams and you get your certificate of qualification, you can then start your articling position and write your bar exams. So you cannot start articling until you're done your NCA exams, but NCA exams do give you a good period of time to secure articling. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Pearl asks, is there a lot of stigma with getting a law degree from the UK? After researching online, it seems Canadian employers might not hire me because I don't have a Canadian law degree. That is an excellent observation, Pearl. So actually, it used to be a much bigger issue than it is. The stigma is quickly dissipating, and I think you'll find if you do a more broad search of employers, you'll find that the stigma is not nearly as prevalent as it used to be. There is a lot of talk, I would say almost trash talk still, from Canadian law students who are threatened by the idea that students can go overseas, get a law degree, and come back to Canada because they see the competition for the jobs that they want. So it's understandable that there is some concern there, not so much from employers anymore. And in fact, employers are looking more for international law and EU law experience as they are going very global with casework. So they need people on staff who have that knowledge and that background. And those are the areas that our students have reported being asked about when they're going into interview. So in fact, your UK law degree sets you apart from the Canadian law degree in different ways. And you really just have to think outside of those particular law firms, especially Bay Street, because Bay Street is still a bit of a tough market. If you don't have an Osgood degree, then it's going to be very, very challenging to get into Bay Street. That's just the way it is. But if you're looking outside of that, you'll definitely find that there are opportunities. And I would recommend, if you're from Ontario, doing some research into Barrie, Ontario, and the law firms that are there. This is the new place for law firms outside of Toronto, and they are definitely hiring internationally trained lawyers, as the majority of my students that have kept in touch who are getting hired are working now in Barrie. And there's all sorts of firms there, from corporate, family, pro bono, all sorts of opportunities. So definitely something to look into if you're from Ontario. Vancouver market is still quite challenging, but there are options available. You just have to think a bit outside the box, which is why I did that whole slide about career options, because you want to think about different opportunities. And one example that I have from one of my students, she was working with the Children's Aid Society when she was here at university in Canada before she went overseas for her law degree. Then she completed her LLB and came back to Canada and was able to secure articling with one of the lawyers that was supervising at the Children's Aid Society. So they created an articling position for her where she was working from home 4 days a week, in the office 1 day a week, and that one lawyer was able to supervise her articling experience so that she could finish articling, do her bar exams, and she's now working at a family firm in Barrie. So there's different opportunities. You just need to look at all of your options, keep your options open, network like crazy. I can't even express how much you need to be focusing on networking, and get every opportunity for work experience that you possibly can. While in university, in holidays, whenever they come available, take the opportunities. Yes, Barrie is a very nice place. Thank you, Pearl. Yes, definitely a great option. Okay, so that's all the questions I have listed. Does anybody have any other questions? Let's scroll down here, see if I missed anything. Nope, that looks like everything. Well, I'll give it a couple more minutes to see if anybody's typing, but I want to take the time to thank you all for joining me this evening. I appreciate you coming out for this webinar, and I hope you found the information helpful. I know I learn new things every time I run a webinar because there's always excellent questions. So thanks again, and get in touch with your advisor to get started on your application. And I wish you all the best with your law school applications. Have a wonderful evening and take care.